So I was wrong about Apple's Studio Display. I use this display as my primary display 6 days a week for up to 12 hours a day, so I think that puts me in a decent position to give you my feedback on it. Is it a bargain or overpriced? Is it hype or does it deliver? We'll dive into all of that today, and before the end, I'll let you know why I was wrong in my other videos. Hi, I'm David. You'll find me here every week chatting about all the latest Apple news and keeping us up to date as possible. My Studio Display arrived on the 14th of May last year, and since then it's been heavily used, and I mean heavily used, every day. I had a pretty good idea of what I was getting into with Apple's Studio Display that was initially launched to partner up with their Mac Studio, as up until then I've been working on a 27-inch iMac. It was partly because of that Mac that I decided to buy the Studio Display. After 8 years of heavy, regular use, that iMac screen was still delivering. It was vibrant, colour accurate and easy on the eyes. And here's my first point I've overlooked in my other videos, the fact of how kind these Retina displays are on your eyes. A month ago, I had an eye test, which was my first for 2 or 3 years. And in that time, luckily, my prescription hadn't changed at all. Chatting things over with the optician about my workday demands, it came up I was working on Retina displays, and she was convinced that was a contributing factor to the overall health of my eyes. Yes, I work at arm's length and in a good environment, and I take regular breaks, and all that goes towards helping the health of your eyes. But it's something well worth bearing in mind when you're looking at monitor. These Retina displays are special. There's very little screen burn on that old iMac, even after all of those hours that I've used it for. So all of these factors help when I was umming and ahhing over getting the newest, latest and greatest Apple display. A year ago, I was deciding whether to make the change for the first time to move away from working on a desktop Mac to a MacBook. M1 was killing it, and it was only a few months before that that Apple had just announced the M1 Pro and Max models of the MacBook Pro. The biggest hurdle I faced in switching from iMac to MacBook was the screen size. As amazing as the displays are on the 16-inch MacBooks, it's still only 16 inches. And working on that size screen, given the kind of work I do, it just wasn't going to cut it. The problem was that the MacBook was already stupid expensive. And then I was going to pile another £1,500 or dollars on top of that. This was a serious outlay, big money. And like any of us, I was nervous about making such a big spend. Early on, I mentioned I was wrong about the Studio Display. The truth is, I wasn't only wrong about one thing or once, I was actually wrong about a few things. But now I can see that I made a few mistakes in how I've been summing up the Studio Display, and I'll cover all of them as we carry on, and hopefully I'll help you decide if this monitor is for you. We'll cover all of that later. The first of my mistakes though was in how I was looking at the price. Turns out it wasn't expensive at all, but it was actually value for money. But let me explain what I mean a little bit better. We all get excited and carried away by, say, the specs of the MacBook Pro, the neural engines, the number of graphic cores, or how quickly it can export a 4K video. And don't get me wrong, that is all mightily impressive, and I wouldn't want to be without it. But my point here is that we don't actually see any of it. That's just all the clever stuff that it does in the background, and we come to expect from it, and fairly so. We pay a lot for it, but the difference with the display is that we actually see it. The money you or me spend or invest is right in front of our eyes. We can't see the unified memory, but we can see the brightness and the accuracy of the screen in front of us. So mistake one was it wasn't expensive, but actually an investment. Sure, look, it is a lot of money to lay down, but try to think of the longevity you'll get out of it as well. And that's another point worth thinking about too. If my Intel iMac, which is basically the same display as this panel, is anything to go by, then I'll still be using this display in nearly a decade from now. So if you think of the £1,500 or dollars over 8 or 10 years, and the fact it's helping preserve your eye health too, well, suddenly it doesn't seem all that expensive, does it? If this is your first time along with us, it's great to have you here. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm here every week making videos just like this, and in fact, a few weeks ago, I even had a 3D model printed of Apple's mixed reality headset just so we could get a better idea of it in the real world. So all you need to do to make sure you don't miss that kind of content is get subscribed and join our team too. So that way, hopefully you'll get notified when I upload any of my next videos. I've also got a main list that you can join too. I'll leave a link to it below. It's totally free. And every weekend I send out a behind the scenes video for you just to let you know what's going on here on the channel. So if that sounds your kind of thing, after you subscribed, go and put your name down on the mailing list too. So mistake 1, the cost. Mistake 2, I'll come back to that in just a moment. But first, a few things I was actually right about. Yeah, I didn't get everything wrong. The overall quality is beautiful. I keep coming back to the point that this is what you will see most of every day at your desk. My MacBook Air and MacBook Pro just sit either side on me, but when I'm sitting editing these videos, writing blogs or scripts for these videos, what I'm actually looking at is the studio display. The thin black bezels are thin enough to be almost invisible, and I really don't notice them. The panel's display just seems to go from edge to edge. The fact there's no chin is lovely too, just one less distraction, and it goes towards making it a cleaner working experience. The footprint is so much smaller than my iMac, which means it's easy to fit into any workspace with the stand being so small. The back, in most instances, doesn't get seen. I mean, it's pretty enough, don't get me wrong, but let's face it, Apple didn't spend too much time back there. The only real dealings you have with the back are the 3 remaining USB-C ports. The Thunderbolt port, one of which, of course, runs straight to your MacBook Pro, and the other 3 ports have that lovely, reassuring clunk and fit when you use them. Part of me wishes they were round the front, although that would make it a little bit easier to use. It would also ruin that clean aesthetic line, coming back to this uncluttered working environment that this display gives you. So, mistake number 2, the stand. Apple has taken a lot of heat over the fact the basic stand you get with the display doesn't come with height adjustment, but only with tilt. Firstly, we had form on this, as Apple's other display, the stunning Pro Display XDR, has no stand at all when you buy it, and that display is over 3 times the price of this one. The stand you do get though is solid and again has a feeling of prestige engineering to it. It feels better put together than the one on the iMac's mechanism actually, and it does the job really, really well. As for the height, it seems that just about everyone these days has some kind of riser on their desks anyway, which means the height is not an issue. Tilt is the main adjustment you need to alter for sun and daylight. The height part is just one of those things to moan about that really isn't an issue. As for the last 2 mistakes I made in my other video, well, they were down to the peripherals, the speakers and the camera. The 12 megapixel camera was and is utterly useless. Even after all the firmware updates and fixes, it borders on being unusable. But then you could easily counter that with the terrific 6-point speakers and spatial audio you get as part of this display. But oddly, in my opinion, neither matters. I never use either of them. Okay, I know my desk setup may be a little different in that I have powered studio monitors, a turntable and an interface that I use, but even when I take this display to my filming studio, I never use the speakers. I always use AirPods Pro or Max. The only time I've ever listened to or used the built-in speakers on the studio display, I promise, is when I'm making videos about it. Honestly, I never use them. And the same is true with the camera. Again, sure, I know I have plenty of options of cameras to use, but honestly, how many video calls do you make each day or week? And now with Continuity Camera, for the sake of £40, you can mount your iPhone on your MacBook and use possibly the best camera you've got anyway. And again, if you look back at the Pro Display XDR as a reference, you don't get either of these bolt-ons on that display, which lets you know where Apple placed them as their true priorities. With either the Studio Display or the Pro Display, you pay for what is important, the panel, the color, and the workflow, that investment into your work life. I guess in an ideal world, I'd have said to Apple, scrub the speakers and the camera and bring the price point down a few £100 or dollars. But Apple, for whatever reason, decided to include them. So I was wrong to moan about the camera, as I've never used it, and I was wrong about the speakers, good as they are, for the same reason, I just don't use them. This isn't and has never pretended to be a gaming monitor or some kind of whiz-bang gimmicky monitor. What it is though is beautifully built, understated, great to use and kind to your eyes. Is it a monitor I suggest you buy? Yes, in a heartbeat, but with a few conditions attached. The type of work you do each day would depend if a 5K color accurate monitor is the right choice for you in the first place. But assuming that you're in a creative space of some kind, working with video timelines, Lightroom or Photoshop, then you could not go far wrong in buying a studio display. Up against even, say, the LG 5K display, it just looks better and it's more stylish as well. And again, don't dismiss that as being a pointless vanity comment. As I've kept banging away about in this video, that is what you'll be looking at hour after hour, day after day. So the fact it's pretty matters. A year in, and I'm happier now with the display than ever. No signs of wearing, and it makes every session at the desk as easy as possible. Yes, I've made mistakes in past videos. I'll put my hands up to that. But what I did get right was the investment in my business and my health. Forget about the bits you'll never use or see and focus, literally focus on what you do see. And what you do see is gorgeous. I'll be back next week, but in the meantime, check out one of my previous videos, mistakes included on the display, or take a look at my thoughts on the MacBook Air. Team, I'll catch you over there in a moment.